All right. So we're here on a special edition of Couch Coach Live. We're going to talk tonight about the retirement of Roy Williams. So I had to get my guys here. First, I'm going to introduce my guest. One of my first guests is Jeremy Greene from Sportsocracy and of ESPN Asheville. What's going on, Jeremy?
Oh, can't complain. Roy has made my schedule much more hectic today than I planned.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. And of course, I got my guy, one of my off the ball network colleagues, another fellow UNC guy, my guy Jelani in the building. What's going on, Jelani?
Nothing much, Coach. Appreciate you for having me on. Appreciate being on with Greene, except from ESPN. And I know it's made his day a little hectic. It made my day yesterday a little bit, sad, confusing in the morning. But, like I said, just ready to get into it and just thank him for all that he's done for UNC.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna go with you first, Jeremy. What is the pulse in Asheville? What is going on as far as what you're hearing in the streets of Asheville? Just their overall thoughts of what's going on.
In all honesty, it's shock. We knew Roy's retirement was coming. We just didn't think it was coming so quickly. The last 2 years have been rough. Roy was never much of a one and done guy. He got into this market because he had to. Guys like Krzyzewski, Calipari, that's been their model. And now it's come to a point in the NCAA. I mean, even Mark Few, who has been adamantly against one and dones, he's even got Jalen Suggs this year. So Roy knew he had to get into this. The funny thing to me, and something I've heard a lot, I heard it a lot on my show today, this is exactly how Dean went out. And it is so strange, the dynamic 23 years later between Roy and Coach Smith.
Yeah, and that's something, and I love that you guys brought up this morning too, because even almost in the sense of the fashion of how they lost in the sense in the tournament, in the sense, it's eerily familiar, and it's so crazy, and and we'll allude to it, and I think this process potentially might be like, it might take a few years to get to where they need to get. So with this, there's a lot of parallels with that. So
now here, I will say here in Asheville, there's a lot of people that are really excited that Roy might wind up back here. He grew up here. He actually went to the same high school I did. I've known Roy for probably 15, 20 years. His best friend and his coach in high school was my driver's ed instructor at T.C. Robertson High School in Asheville.
That's crazy.
Nice. So we heard the news yesterday, and this how the information kind of was disseminated. So I'm gonna go with you first, Jelani. Well, how surprised were you of Coach Williams' retirement?
Yeah, I personally, I don't know. Like I knew, just like Greene just said, the one and done era just really wasn't for him. I know that. I think one of the reasons why it came down to where feeling like I guess he needed to step away. And I just didn't think it, like I say, would come so soon. They haven't had the greatest of 2 years. Unfortunately, last year, of course, with Cole Anthony being injured, that's kind of what was supposed to make that train go. And then this year, had top 3 recruiting class, but everything didn't really pan out the way it was supposed to. I didn't think it'd come yesterday. And of course, April Fool's Day, everybody's thinking, is it April Fool's? Is it, is it a joke? Is it not? And then I'm reading, of course, the Tar Heels, tweets and everything. Armando Baycots is the one I really read, but he was like, no, it's not a joke. It's not an April Fool's joke. He's really done. So just a little bit shocked. I didn't, just didn't want to see him, go out the way he did. Of course, like you guys are saying, it's really familiar to the way Dean stepped down. But I just thought like maybe, I don't know, that he just give it maybe another year, another year or two. I think we're supposed to have a pretty good recruiting class coming in next year as well. But I guess when it's your time, it's your time, and felt like it was his time to step away.
Yeah, Jeremy, your thoughts?
I'll be honest with you. It was kind of like when I met my wife. I was shocked at first when my wife talked to me, and then the more we talked, I went, "Yeah, this kind of makes sense." That's how I felt when I heard about Roy. At first, I went, "I cannot believe he is retiring at this point." I was confident that Krzyzewski was going to go out first. The more I started to think about it, the more it started to make sense. Roy's had health issues. He's passed out on the floor a couple times.
That is true.
He's 70 years old. and we've set this expectation, whether it's with Jim Boeheim, Mike Krzyzewski, Bob Knight. A lot of these guys have coached high into their 70s, in some instances into their 80s. That really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The grind of this is incredible. You know, it's an especially now with grad transfers, the transfer portal. This is not a 6 month and then go play golf for 6 months job. Yeah. You know, they used to call that Steve Spurriering. Steve Spurrier would work as hard as anybody in the business for 6 months, and then he'd play golf for 6 months. And I never thought Roy did that, but now it's a 12-month, 16-hour day job, and that's just not. It's a young man's game, and Roy's 70 years old, and he has other interests. He really likes to play golf. He's got a lot of friends. There's, one of them lives very close to where I'm sitting. We have a mutual friend that lives within 2 minutes of where I'm sitting. And when I talked to him today, he said, "Yeah, Roy's really excited to be playing a good bit of golf."
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I did see some of the players say the same thing.
And what was funny, because like you said, to your point, Jelani, where yesterday it was April Fool's. So the first tweet the first time I heard about it was from Adam Schefter. So first of all, was like, okay, Adam Schefter, is really the football guy. He breaks NBA news from time to time, but when he breaks us like this, and it's not like a retweet, he's literally, breaking. I'm like, all right, this is April 1st. I said I won't go fall for the okie doke. I said I'm always have my head on the swivel, especially on Twitter. Yeah, because it was so many April Fool's jokes. But then, like you said, then the information kind of sent me. Then official sources, like you talked about Armando Baycott, Richmond stand up, and then also Jones Angel as well. So hearing those type sources that are like connected within the program, I'm like, oh boy, this is not this happened. And almost to Jeremy's point as well, where and you kind of touched on this on the show this morning, where kissing the court after beating Duke was kind of like you look at it now as like that was odd. Yeah. But you figured like you guys was attributed, well, it was a long, tough season. This just it just got the best of them. But you seeing that now, though, it's like kind of like one of the kind of the writings on the wall. And then just essentially, and then even the press conference after they lost 2 weeks ago was kind of it was, I wouldn't say it was like more finality, but now hearing back now, thinking, now it felt final in a weird way, as far as that.
I'll be honest with you, I've covered Coach Williams for a lot of years now. I heard him say the phrase, "I don't know," more often this season than I've ever heard him say before. Why are you turning the ball over so much? I don't know. Why is the offense not efficient? I don't know. Yep. I'm doing everything I can do. And you get to a point, I coached for a little bit, and I'll be honest with you get to a point, there are just certain teams that never gel. No matter what you do, no matter how much work you put in, the pieces just don't fit together. And I feel like Coach Williams had 2 of those in a row. And at 70 years old, I just feel like that was and Roy's a very faithful man too. There is part of this that I think he just looked at it and said, "This is God trying to tell me my time has passed, and now it's time to move on."
Yeah. And like you said, and the writers was on the wall, and and hey, we it definitely it's like that. But so fellas, I want to get your take on your favorite moments of Roy. We'll go with you first, Jelani.
Yeah, so my favorite, I'm pretty young Tar Heels fan. I'm 24 years old. I know you guys been around much longer than I have, but I grew up in North Carolina a little bit, born in Greensboro, got family all over the state, so it was really no choice. I'm born and bred Tar Heel fan. I guess my favorite moment I will say is honestly his first championship there, because that was probably my favorite team to watch, because I was young, but still I loved just to see everybody on that 2005 team. Even one of those guys from my team ended up getting drafted by my Atlanta Hawks. Probably shouldn't have been drafted there, but just that connection, it made me just like that team even more. But that first, like I said, that first championship, and I think I watched the Hoopers run this morning. The monkey on his back was, would he ever even get one coming out of Kansas? But that capturing that first title, I think 2 years into his tenure as a UNC coach, I guess was pretty special for him. Like I said, that's one of the earliest memories I have, just watching Tar Heel basketball in general, and just really falling in love with that team, like Sean May, like I said, Marvin Williams, what you call it, Raymond Felton, just all those guys. McCann. Yep, Rashawn McCann, the shooter, love that man. Now he's hooping in the big three, but definitely, like I said, just love that team overall. That just everything that they brought together. It's just one of those unique UNC teams that you just felt like, well, like I said, I was young eyes, but I just felt like they would win that year. And like I said, it ended up turning out to be true. So probably one of my favorite moments. Other than that, just all the dancing videos every time he comes in the locker room after they have a big win, you can never, not smile about one of those. Just him getting everybody hyped and jumping around, and him always, just being snazzy with his suits, his shoes, all that. It's just a joy to see every time. Like I said, they're winning.
Yeah. Jeremy, your thoughts?
I agree with Jelani that the 05 team. I mean, you got to understand where that came from. Matt Doherty was a fantastic recruiter. He was a horrendous coach, and he was not a very pleasant man. So Chapel Hill had been very tense for a couple years. Roy comes back home, and he won with Matt Doherty's players. Matt Doherty had one of the greatest recruiting classes in the history of Carolina basketball. He actually signed 6 top 50 recruits in the same year. It will go down as one of the most immortal recruiting classes in the history of college basketball. Roy wins with those players. I'll go with 2 different moments. And this one's going to sound a little strange coming from somebody that works for a Carolina network. The year, and I want to say it's 4 years ago, Kendall Marshall hits one of the most unbelievable shots I have ever seen that nobody talks about because of what happened right after it.
Yeah.
It's against Villanova. Villanova comes down. The big kid whose name I cannot think of, he played in the NBA for like 8 seconds. It'll come to me in a minute.
Yeah.
I remember the post game with Roy, and all he could talk about was the fight of the team and all of these things. And that's the man that I have come to know. And there's something, as both an analyst and as a former coach, those are the moments where you really see the mark of a man. It's really easy to be a legend when you're winning. When things don't go your way, you see the true mark of who somebody is. And I'll give a personal aside. This is my favorite personal Roy moment. I've met Roy numerous times. This was probably 15 years ago in the basketball offices in Chapel Hill. I'm actually a Florida State fan and have been since the early 90s. I work for a Carolina network. I live in Carolina territory, and you have to pick a Carolina team to pull for. I picked North Carolina because I can't stand Duke and can't stand NC State. So we're in the basketball offices at Chapel Hill, and Roy and I are talking. I'm with a few other people, and Steve Robinson comes through the offices. I've met a lot of people in my life. I've worked for ESPN for several years. I don't go fanboy very often. Steve Robinson was one of the first people I really revered in basketball. He was Florida State's coach back in the late 90s. And Roy walks me up to Coach Robinson, introduces me, talks me up, like I'm better than I am, which he had a very good knack for doing. He could make you sound phenomenal no matter who you are. And Coach Robinson and I and Roy sat there and talked for about 45 minutes. It's one of my greatest moments in all of my time working in sports.
Nice. Yeah. And almost to your point too, Jeremy, where you look at one of the things I love about Roy Williams, the personal relationships. I think about Marcus Page. You talking about Marcus Page hitting that crazy.
Yeah, should have been I think I said Kendall Marshall.
I think you said Marcus Page, but the speech that he had on senior night, I think that was in 16, his last year, and it just brought him to tears and just those type of things. I think when you look at especially life, you really it's beyond the 903 wins, the 18 years at Carolina, the 9 Final Fours, the 3 championships. It's a relationship that he's built, and you just look at everybody. It's almost like he has that Dean Smith type of effect on these players.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just like it's a relationship that is going to last forever. And even I look at guys like Paul Pierce, talk about him, in his Kansas days, there he's very revered to him. Nick Collison, Kirk Heinrich, those type of Kansas guys, and then it translated to UNC. And it's even in the press conference yesterday, I'd love, that's the thing, he mentions all these guys, and it's just like you think to yourself, like, how as a player for him, how great for you to hear your name and being discussed in this press conference, and that's, like you said, and I bet, like you said, how he made you feel good about, it made you feel better than what you thought you were, but that's how he made, like you said, that's how it seems like he made everyone else feel. And then just, I think one of the nice moments I liked is about Kenny Williams, and actually Kenny Williams actually from my area in Richmond, Virginia, probably one of the best players in this decade, in the previous decade in the state of Virginia, and he was talking about how after that Auburn loss, he kissed him on his head, on top of his head, and that's like one of his favorite pictures in his office. Not like those type of things you got, like it's the relationship type of aspect of it. Yeah. And then also that 05 team was special. Like you said, that was McCants, those guys like my age, so it was kind of cool to be in that type of that time frame where team was good. And then, like you said, Matt Doherty, and it's funny because I liked Matt Doherty. I know that's unpopular, but I liked him. I figured that because I wanted him to kind of give him a chance. I was kind of one of those like all right, give it some time, maybe he can do something with this team. But Roy came at the right time, so I was kind of with that. But then just those moments, like you said, the press conferences, the dancing in the locker room, and then it was a lot of stuff that he did and kind of just restored the tradition here at UNC. That
Doherty was a hyper intense guy. That's something that gets underreported. Doherty was a hyper intense guy. They had a nickname for him. It was Hurricane Doherty because he would come through and things would get thrown against the wall. There are many stories I could tell you about Matt Doherty. Yeah. And when Roy came in, it was like a calming force. It was almost like a homecoming of, we know what you did at Kansas and everything you did at Kansas. We respect that. This is where you were meant to be. Yep. And just 3 years after he had turned them down because the time was, I don't know if you heard the story about why he told in his press conference yesterday why he turned down Carolina.
Nick Collison.
Because he had told Nick Collison, I'll be here all 4 years you're in college, and I wasn't going to lie to him. Wow. You just don't hear that from coaches anymore.
Exactly. Yep.
They will leave in a heartbeat. They'll be on the first plane out. And that and that was another thing too, where it's like, God, that's just amazing to think. And then that's like you said, it just goes back to that relationship piece where it's just like you're not gonna have those type of bonds. And it's just, nowadays it's just, how it is, and just the nature of it.
Business.
And definitely, that's definitely with that. So, fellas, what's next? Who's gonna be new head coach of the Tar Heels? I'm gonna go with you first, Jelani. What's your thoughts on what's next for UNC?
Yeah, so I probably just got the same names that everybody's been floating around ever since he, announced the retirement. But of course, UNC likes to keep it in the family. Either former players, former assistants, stuff like that. The two biggest names that's been floating around is Hubert Davis and Wes Miller. Of course, Hubert Davis was, played there a while ago. He's been on the bench last 9 years or something like that for UNC. So I think he's one of the big favorites. Wes Miller, of course, I think he's had a lot of success over at UNC Greensboro. Some Southern Conference championships. He's a young player. I think he played last time he played it was 2007, something like that.
Yep. He's had 3 Southern Conference championships in 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's incredible, amazing numbers. So I think I'm hearing that West is probably supposed to be the favorite. I guess Hubert maybe just has the seniority right now. Obviously, just being there, on the bench for 9 years with Roy Williams. Any of those two guys, like I said, I would love to have, especially like I said, a winner in Wes Miller. Like I said, 3 Southern Conference championships in the last 5 years. That's amazing. And he's, like I said, one of the younger guys. So maybe they will look to turn to a more youthful coach, because I think, like Greene said, that's kind of like the name of the game nowadays. They're youthful coaches or former players are starting to get these coaching roles. They'll be able to kind of connect with the the younger players a little bit differently maybe than the older generation of coaches are able to nowadays. So I think one of those two is probably definitely primed to get the position. Obviously, there's a few bigger names outside of those. Well, I guess within the family, I guess they've been looking at like maybe Mark Few, with Tony Bennett in Virginia and stuff like that. Just names been flown around, but I don't think they're looking outside of like outside the Carolina tree anyway. So more than likely those names just kind of just being thrown just for headlines and stuff. So I think my guess would, if I was to guess and pick one, I think it would be Wes Miller. But like I said, either of these two gentlemen definitely are deserving of the position.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like you said, Jelani, I'm like you as well, in a sense where I'm like I'm always champion alums. Like I always being like what's Penny's doing at Memphis, what Jawan is doing at Michigan, and what Mike Woodson going to do at Indiana.
Yep.
But I'm going to tell you something really, really strange, but not strange, but open my eyes
too. I don't know.
And Jeremy, y'all put out a name that I totally forgot about, but it might go against the grain of what I've always thought as far as coaching hires. I'm gonna get one of the ones that you talked about was Brad Stevens, so I'm gonna let you discuss that.
That's the first call. It's always been an open secret around Brad Stevens that the two jobs he would listen to are Duke and North Carolina. He had the option to go back to Butler a couple years ago from the Celtics. He's been a good NBA coach. Boston's a different animal. I'll tell you a fun stat about the Celtics. They've been a franchise for 1 billion years. They're currently in their second longest title drought in franchise history.
Yep.
It's 9 years. They expect championships. They don't care about 50-win seasons. They don't care about getting bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals. They want banners. They want rings. And I think that's starting to weigh on him. I think Brad Stevens, if he takes the call, he'll take the job. If you hear anything about Bubba Cunningham being in Boston or Brad Stevens being in Chapel Hill, he will take the job. I don't know that will happen, but he will be the first call. Yeah. Mark Few at Gonzaga will be the second call. But don't believe all the filler. Tony Bennett's not a candidate for this job. Yeah. Matt Painter at Purdue is not a candidate for this job. If they go outside the family, it will only be to hire an unbelievable high-end coach. North Carolina's hired outside the family one time. You know who that hire was?
Dean Smith?
That's the one.
I'm about to say.
Marquette.
Oh, yeah, Marquette. And before, yeah. So
that's the advice of Frank McGuire, by the way.
Yeah.
That works out pretty well. Yeah. So people that say it's definitively in the family, don't be so sure of that. The in the family thing, that leads to a lot of Jared Haas from Stanford. Obviously, Wes Miller, like Jelani talked about. Don't buy Hubert Davis. I don't know where that's coming from. I like Hubert. He's a very, very good coach. He's never been a head coach before. And I will tell you this. I want you to think about what I'm getting ready to say. Bubba Cunningham has made 2 big hires in his whole tenure at North Carolina. The first one was Larry Fedora to be the football coach. That went horribly badly because he was the hot, up-and-coming Southern Mississippi coach. The other one, he went to Mac Brown, who was 66 years old when he hired him. Don't let age convince you a guy's not going to get a job. I'll tell you, Steve Robinson's a dark horse for this job. You don't want to be the guy that replaces the guy. You want to be the guy that replaces the guy that replaces the guy. I could easily see a path where Steve Robinson takes his job over for 3-4 years and then moves on when he hits about 70, and then Wes Miller might be ready for this job. I don't fully believe Wes Miller's ready for this job right now. This is the best job in college basketball.
Yep.
And I love Wes. I think he's the best coach. He's been on my show multiple times. The Southern Conference Tournament is held in Asheville. I have all those guys on my show every year. Wes is a phenomenal human being. This is a huge jump, and he would tell you that too.
Yeah, because like even what you guys were saying this morning, where he literally would have to potentially have to take another job, not like a Power 5 job, to even consider coming to Carolina.
Yeah.
My partner, Tank Spencer, believes that. I think that's total nonsense. I think having the relationships, the next coach at Carolina is going to have to do one thing very well. And it became difficult for Roy because we had so many one and dones in a short period of time. Mac Brown literally took a compass and drew a 150-mile radius around the campus and said, nobody in this circle gets away from us. We get them all. And he's done a tremendous job of it. The spectrum is a little wider in basketball, but if you can recruit North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, you will do tremendously good things at North Carolina. And I think Wes Miller can do that. It would just take some time.
Yeah.
And that's my fear with Wes. I love him to death. And frankly, if he gets – there's almost no one I've heard that could get this job that would be a less than ideal hire to me. I'm good with all of them. But that would be my pause with Wes Miller.
Yeah. And like you said, because Wes is only because he's
38.
38.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's 4 years older than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was on the old fast squad as senior. Yep, that's right. Oh, yeah, so he's my age. Yeah, he's a year older than me. Yep.
He was a senior in college the year I was a senior in high school.
Wow.
I like to tell him that too because he still looks younger than me.
He does have a baby face.
No, right?
If I can, though, Coach, I wanted to ask, I guess, Greene a question, real quick, just about like, I know you said, a few guys that may be dark horses, for the candidacy, but I guess like if you had maybe like a top 3 that you would more so, I guess you more so feel are probably getting those first 3 calls, maybe take those first 3 jobs, and then just kind of like, obviously this is probably like the best job in, like you just said, in college basketball at the moment, top 5 blue blood type school. Heavily got, even the class that's coming back is pretty good class.
The thing about the class that's coming in is it's thin.
Yeah.
Roy did not expect to lose Walker Kessler. He really didn't expect to lose Dayron Sharp. He didn't expect to lose
one was going to come
Manley.
back. Yeah.
They went into this recruiting period thinking all of those bigs were coming back. So whoever takes this job is going to have to be able to immediately hit the transfer portal and immediately be able to hit the remaining recruits that can classify into this class.
Yeah. At least the one thing I guess that is good, the transfer portal seems like it's the hottest thing right now on the block. So, but like I said, there's names I guess that are being like they're basically getting shifted here and there. I guess basically getting taken and going to different schools. But I guess another thing is too, we all know like the traditional system. Of course, Roy ran with the traditional 2 bigs. I know a lot of people saying college basketball is not, you don't see that too often. Well, I guess what coach. I guess it depends on what coach is coming in, but do you see them kind of trying to stick to that, philosophy, even with them losing these certain guys, or, they're just he's going to have to put their own spin on, I guess the talent and guys that he has. Like, for example, Brad Stevens come in, kind of what do you see him doing with the roster that we have?
The reason I can tell you Tony Bennett will not be the next head coach in North Carolina is, and I heard this put as and this is the least elegant way possible, but it's the best way I could put it. When you watch Virginia, North Carolina basketball does not look like that
whatsoever,
and the fan base will not be okay with it looking like that.
No.
Tony Bennett's a great coach, but that's not the Carolina way. Carolina is very big on the way things are done, and offensive efficiency is one of those things that has been a hallmark of this program for 60 years, which is why I would say that you asked me a top 3, I'm going to give you 5 solely because there are 2 in 2 of these 3 categories that I can't differentiate between. The initial calls will be Brad Stevens and Mark Few. If either one of those guys will take this job, that will be the next head coach at North Carolina. The next run I believe they make is at Wes Miller. He's in a tier by himself. He's the second call. Mm-hmm. If for some reason Wes doesn't think he's ready for this job, he doesn't impress Bubba Cunningham, whatever the case may be, it immediately goes to Steve Robinson, Hubert Davis. That's really that. If I had to bet my house, I would say the next coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels is one of the five guys I just said.
Yeah, you could definitely see that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So so
don't buy the Jay Wright thing either.
Yeah,
Jay Wright loves Philadelphia more than I love ice cream.
Yeah, I was about to say he's there.
I heard that too. I'm like, nah. But you know, and before we head out, I found it very interesting that Kansas signed Bill Self for a lifetime deal today. I thought that was rather peculiar.
You weren't the only one. That was a very popular topic on my show today. My afternoon show today, Bill Self's name came up more than once. That I don't think that had anything to do with Carolina.
Yeah,
I think that had more to do with the NBA. Bill Self's taken calls on the NBA for as long as I can remember.
Yeah,
and it has been an open secret that if the San Antonio Spurs job came open, Greg Popovich's choice to replace him would be Bill Self. Well, I'll tell you what that tells me, and you can tell me I'm crazy. I tend to be right on these things way more often than I'm wrong. That tells me Greg Popovich might not be long for the NBA.
Wow.
That's the only job and I've been told this for 10 years. Yeah. The only job Bill Self's leaving for is the NBA, and the one he really wants is San Antonio.
Yeah, which makes sense. Stability, like Kansas. Yeah, definitely totally makes sense. But yes, indeed. Definitely appreciate you fellas for hopping on for this special edition of Couch Coach Live. So I'm gonna go around the horn. Jelani, where can they find you on social media?
So thank you again, Coach, for having me on. Green, it's a pleasure to be on with you. Definitely would hope to have you on my show, soon. But
let me know. I do a lot of these now that I have this plus studio.
It's definitely nice. Like I said, I need that helmet that you got. But like the coach just said, you can find me on Twitter, WTGMTM podcast. The letters in the front stand for what the game means to me. Me and Thad, my co-host, are actually about to do a show in about an hour. Just kind of doing a sports review of the week, going through pretty much all the big news that happened. So definitely we'll tip our hat to Coach Roy and talk about a few other things that been happening across all sports throughout the week. Also can find us on Facebook and Instagram at What the Game Means to Me as well. Like I said, thank you again, Coach, for having me on. Shout out to Off the Ball Network. I know you're going to do it, but get you 20% off at Manscaped plus free shipping with promo code OTBN.
Yes, indeed. Jeremy, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me right here at Jay Greene ESPN on Twitter, all social medias, Cash App if you feel so inclined. I'm kidding. Don't Cash App me. It's weird. I've said that on shows before, and people send me like 40 cents, and I get confused. You can find me every weekday morning on YouTube at The Sportsocracy. Fun show. It's our web show. All the topics are driven by the fans. If we get rallied on a topic and the people watching want us to steer away, the comments drive the conversation. It is the Democratic Republic of Sports. You can also find me on iHeartRadio and the ESPN Radio app, the Sports Tank with Jeremy Greene, weekdays 3 to 5 on ESPN Radio in Asheville. And one more quick, I have to say this because it is Coach Williams and he means so much to me. Roy and I grew up about 10 minutes from each other. Now he's markedly older than me. He was already at Kansas by the time I was coming up. But he always had his hand on our program. And the fact that Roy Williams from Little Swannanoa, North Carolina, which is 15 minutes from where I grew up, could have a career in sports was one of the people that was an impetus for me. And every one of these hits I've done today, just on the off chance that Coach happens to see one, I just have to say thank you for motivating me. I owe much of where I have gotten in life to Coach Williams, and I will always love him for that.
Sure.
Man, very well said. Definitely. Wow, that was great. Yes, indeed. And follow the podcast. Wow, that was follow the podcast on anywhere social media on the Couch Coach Live, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram under Couch Coach Live. Also YouTube, Couch Coach Live. And also don't forget to head on to manscaped.com. Use our promo code OTBN. Get free shipping and 20% off. And man, definitely appreciate you guys for coming on tonight. And man, once again, thank you, Coach. And man, it's been another special edition of Couch Coach Live. We'll catch you on the next go round.
Have a good one. Oh, he did it. I knew he was gonna do it. He pressed the leave studio versus the in broadcast, but he'll probably pop up in a second. But definitely, like you just said, thank you, Coach Wood.